Professor Eric Martin, and welcome to Unit 3 for SS 392 Gandhian Ethics and Values. And today I want to cover a little bit about what we did last week, make sure we're all squared away for what we're doing this week, get an idea about what we're doing next week, and just make sure we're kind of all good to go on the online course here. And in terms of the content, a lot of there'll be some content in the videos, but a lot of these videos are really making sure we all know what we're supposed to do. In the world of online education, I don't know if I'd go quite as far as to say that the online courses are a bit of a be your own professor operation, but they kind of are. So we've got the readings going on, we've got the discussions going on. I've done my best to set up some quality content for y'all to engage in. And then it's up to y'all to engage. So I don't know how much follow-up I'm going to do on some of the discussions and things, although some, and we're about to find out, huh? So anyway, let's go through a few things. In terms of last week, week 2, you took that quiz on understanding ethical reasoning. At the moment, Blackboard seems to be refusing to grade it. I don't know what's up. But I did send a message to one of the good people here at LCSC's e-learning department, and you guys just hang tight. We'll get it sorted out, and that'll be fixed. Now, we didn't discuss that reading at all, the understanding ethical reasoning, and I kind of wish we would have, but I didn't want to overwhelm us on the discussion boards. I know some of y'all have been on online courses where it was just overwhelming the amount of action you spend on the discussion boards. And I want us to spend some degree of time on that, but I want us to spend more of our time reading and not necessarily each other's discussions posts. So anyway, if there's any questions that you have about that reading, understanding the foundations of ethical reasoning, y'all be sure to bring them up on our discussion boards, even in the miscellaneous question thing. You can bring up anything you want. But despite the fact that we didn't discuss it, y'all keep that reading around, because I think that reading gives us a pretty good structural layout of a thought process to go through an ethical dilemma. And then maybe we can use that to think about why Gandhi thought, certain ways that he did, and then maybe we can use it, for ourselves in trying to evaluate ethical and moral dilemmas. All right. Also, last week, discussion board postings. I enjoyed reading your postings. It's interesting to me to see people's initial reactions to the A&E biography, because I think that the A&E biography presents a lot of new material to folks, and y'all reflected a lot of it. The role of his mother and the role of his father's death, right? Those are big. The whole shyness issue that is going to come out even more in the readings for this week. The impact of that first night in South Africa on the train platform. Just the whole Gandhian experience that I think we forget about, or we don't know about anyway, and it's a super interesting life. his efforts to become a gentleman, his efforts to come up with some type of warfare that's not based on violence. So, and then just some of the criticisms too. Several of y'all brought up issues about the choices he made in terms of prioritizing public service over his family. And there's plenty to criticize there in terms of, for us to think about, the kinds of choices that are made. And then some of y'all made comments about not really realizing how involved he was in politics. So for me, it's really cool to see y'all's initial reactions to this. Now, I've got another series, and I'll talk about it in a few minutes because y'all are going to watch it for this week. But there's another series, and I'm still in the process of setting the videos up for the course. So anyway, if y'all want to go back and rewatch this, be my guest. It'll be good for you. It gives you good, solid background. And then we got some other things that are going to get into a little more detail. The obituaries. I think using obituaries are pretty cool. They're a different way of thinking about history. One of y'all brought up the point that the obituaries seem to have just kind of ended abruptly. I didn't remember it ending like that. I looked at it too. So if I see something different, I'll send it along to you. But again, the point of the obituary was to give us a broad look at this guy's life that we probably didn't know very much about to begin with. Now, as far as your grades were concerned on the discussion posts, your grades worked something along these lines. I wanted that initial posting up by the Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. deadline. And I wanted that to be thoughtful, engaged in the material, just like I said in the discussion boards for the instructions. A paragraph's probably fine for the initial thread. I wanted you to have a second posting, a response to somebody else's, up before Saturday at 11:59 p.m. That posting, again, needs to be thoughtful. It needs to be based on the material. It has to be something better than, I agree. Although you could start it with I agree and then go into some details. And that one, 3 sentences probably fine. And if you do those things, I'm satisfied. Satisfied translates into a C, translates into a 75, right? If you want to do something better than satisfied, well, then you can decide whether, there's a few different options. One of them is to make those pieces a little longer and make them in more detail. The other way is to do, a couple additional ones of them. But for the most part, what you wrote was fine. The grades weren't entirely based strictly on length, but that's one spot where many of you could improve things. Also, in a course about Gandhi, it's best not to misspell his name. And I know that's tricky because it seems natural for that H to come right after the G, but it doesn't. So just keep that in mind. All right, that's for last week. Let's talk about this week, huh? This week, we have, well, here we go. This week, we are getting into the materials in the autobiography. Now, in order to set that up, I have got another Gandhi video for you to watch. Now, this video is a newer one. It's made in 2009 by the BBC, by the British Broadcasting Corporation. And it's a 3-part series, and we're going to watch all 3 parts. We're just not going to watch all 3 parts this week because part 1 more or less covers the entirety of this book, right? Not just the entirety of what we're reading, but the entirety of the book. Because, of course, when you write an autobiography, right, it's not complete. There's quite a bit of Gandhi's life at the end of this book, but this gets us into it. So I want y'all to watch that video, and that's from Films on Demand. I think I have it all fixed. I think I figured out how the links work. If you've got issues with it, let me know. Take notes, okay? Take notes, and your notes ought to be something along the lines of, kind of the same thing as doing with the A&E biography. Identifying, describing the key people, events, moments in Gandhi's life that made him Gandhi. The kinds of ethical questions he seems to be engaged in. But now maybe you can compare this version to the A&E biography. And some of that could be a comparison based on material covered, based on whether, one of them seemed more, critical than the other. But it could also just be, I preferred the style of one over the other. And then we're going to want to, think about how it works for this. But the point is that I think that sometimes in online courses, it can be easy for us to forget that we're supposed to be taking notes. And one of the reasons I want to emphasize that is because our brains work in many different ways. And your brain is firing and doing its thing while you're reading. And it's firing and doing its thing in a slightly different way while you're watching a video. And it's firing and doing its thing a little bit differently if you're taking notes while you do this, so that you're not just kind of assuming that video material is just going to enter your head somehow and you're just going to absorb it through osmosis, right? Taking good notes on this material. Again, keeping in mind that I'm still in the process of trying to get this research paper together for you. But one of the things, obviously, that we're going to be doing with this research paper is integrating all the materials that we've used, plus a few that you found on your own. So one really good way of making sure you don't have to go back through all this stuff and watch it all again and read it all again is to take really good notes on it, so you can just refer back to your notes. Okay? So that's notes. That's notes on Gandhi's early years. Same thing with Gandhi's autobiography. Y'all ought to be taking some degree of notes, although in some ways, his chapters are so short, he almost takes them for you, right? So you could just write out a little summary of each chapter, even 4 or 5 sentences, and you could get quite a bit going on that. But be sure, as far as his autobiography, same thing, describing his intellectual development, the people, the places, the moments that seemed important, and the ethics that he seems to be mostly concerned with, the ethical questions. And then once you do that, go to our discussion boards and just follow the directions. And here's the deal with the discussion boards. As I told you in the very first introductory video, I've never used this book in a class before. I'm curious as to how it's going to work. I've done a lot of teaching about Gandhi, but I've never had a class centered on Gandhi before. And I don't know how we can do it without this. So keep in mind that the spirit of that discussion question is, let's talk about chapter 1, right? And so go ahead, post that formal 250 word, that's just 1 page, reflection piece on the questions as I have them laid out. Respond to some other people's pieces, and let's just talk about the book for a little while. And then maybe as we get through the rest of the semester, I'll refine some better ways of getting this discussion going. But the main thing, let's talk about the stuff we see in here. It's sort of like online book club, and I don't know exactly how that happens, but that's what we're trying to do here, right? All right. So y'all give me any, y'all have any, any questions you have about that? Feel free. The reading, to me anyway, is super interesting. Oh, a couple of things, and I've been meaning to put together kind of a written guide how to approach this reading, but I've been overwhelmed with a few things. So I'll tell you this: don't get caught up in the details. Don't get caught up in the names. Don't worry about that stuff. Some of the names are important in the sense that if you looked them up, you would discover, oh, like that guy's famous. Oh, like he was somebody really important in the Indian nationalist movement. And that's great. But for our purposes, you don't have to know that. Don't get caught up in the, the names, of course, are Indian names. Don't get caught up in trying to remember, everybody's name or worrying about, sometimes one of the things that American students say, is this whole, oh, well, the names were so different, it was hard to keep track. Number one, I'm not sure that's a real excuse. And number two, I'm telling you right now, don't worry about that too much. All right, you can figure that stuff out. So just go through and don't get lost in all the details. It's a bigger story that he's trying to tell. And keep in mind that his audience is an Indian audience. So these are people they would have been familiar with, and they would know these folks, and that's okay that we don't. We'll read it for other things. So anyway, the last thing I want to say about your discussion board posting for this coming week is one of the things that I want to do with this class is somehow shift a little bit of the formal writing onto the discussion boards. So these initial postings, I want them to be formal. I'd like for you to proofread them. I'd like for you to have nice, clear grammatical structure. I'd like to see nice, professional writing so that I can grade them, as such. And so they're easy on the eyes to read and all that kind of stuff, right? Okay, that's this week. Let's talk real briefly about what's happening in Unit 4. I'm still in the process of tinkering with Unit 4. I should have it done by the end of the maybe by the end of Monday. It took me a little longer to get the quiz up this last week than I thought. But basically what we're doing for Unit 4 is we're just moving along through Chapter 2 for this. So just keep on reading, and then we'll take a break from this for a couple of weeks. And I think that ought to get us kind of to where we're at right now. There's been a lot of Gandhian legacy type stuff in the news, whether it is through, we started off with Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, and there's always a bunch of Gandhian legacy stuff there. That's just so easy and so clear. But there's been other things, and I put something up on the announcements. I also operate the LCSC Social Science Division's Facebook page. So I try to put stuff up on the Facebook page that has things to do with our courses. I'm almost the only person who ever posts anything. So if you do the Facebook thing, feel free to go on there and like us. That's the LCSC Social Sciences Division. And we'll have some stuff not only for this course, but for some other courses. But I put some stuff up in the announcements, and I guess that's the best place for it. I'll keep working with that. Just because I think that if we can kind of have a running, we got history on one end, and we got philosophy on another end, and we've got some religion and some other things going on in terms of the the details of the course. And then we also sort of have this current event stream going on at the same time. I think it might make it easier for us to connect all this together in the end. Anyway, that's the deal. If you guys have any questions, you got any comments, you just want to make a face-to-face connection, feel free to come by the campus and see me. It is best if we do that with an appointment with the current office situation that I'm in. However, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 10:30 to 11:30, I'm there. I'm usually there by about 7:30 in the morning. I might be able to stay, later if you let me know you're coming. Wednesdays, I am typically there from 9:30 in the morning until about 2:30 in the afternoon in terms of being available. And I know that that's not convenient for all of y'all. Y'all want to Skype, FaceTime, talk on the phone. We can set up an appointment and do that just about whenever, including the evenings and maybe the weekend. I don't know. There's some things that should be sacred, right? Such as hanging out with your family on the weekends and that kind of stuff. But anyway, we'll figure it out. You guys got comments, questions, get in contact with me. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video, and enjoy your readings and thinking and all that kind of good stuff connected to Gandhi.